computer. Okay, so here we are, MBT Book Club chapters 25 and 26. Quickly set the intention first. So we're just co-creating a very safe space where we can all show up and be fully present, be mindful right here in the moment, and do our best to listen to each other and seek to understand one another and this material that we're going through. There's no criticism or judgment, there's just support and acceptance for one another. So we'll go around and do a check-in and yeah, just see what everybody thought, general thoughts of these two chapters. You want to start?
Sure. Is it to me?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to comment on, but it was maybe the more, I don't know, it's kind of a little dry, I guess, these particular chapters. Absolute unbounded one is just a lot of technical stuff. There were some things I highlighted.
Okay.
And it's good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you too, Dean. Thank you. How about you, Sylvia?
So I sort of felt like you could get in the weeds and make it really complicated, or it was super simple and there's just a couple things that this is, you know, we need to know, and then we could move on to the other stuff. So I couldn't quite decide if it was complicated or super easy.
Right. Yeah, awesome. What about you, Bojana?
Well, for myself, I found actually a lot of clarity in those two chapters, although I found them very difficult to read. I had to really focus on each and every sentence. And I don't know, I'm just such a slow reader or my English is so bad, but I had to really, really focus that I felt like everything, you know, like started making sense just in those two chapters. So I actually personally really enjoyed them.
Awesome. Yeah, Bojana was the first one on the call, and I'm like, she's like, I wanted to underline everything, and I'm like, are we on the same chapter here? I'm like, are you sure? Because yeah, I was falling asleep. I didn't even get through it, guys. Like, yeah.
Well, I must have been in real darkness those two. So I finally am getting the glimpses of light. You probably have gotten the glimpses or the picture a long time ago, and that's why they were not as exciting for you.
I've already seen the movie kind of thing. Well, let's dive in then. Chapter 25.
All righty.
Yeah, evolution of absolute unbounded oneness. Do you guys have anything on the first page highlighted?
No.
The only thing I really took from this is all the learning through your DNA, like just that whole concept. It's the last sentence on the first paragraph, first sentence of the last paragraph, that, you know, that there's this evolutionary process where we can physically pass on learning in your DNA. And because it's a while ago and I remember the second chapter we read better than the first chapter that we read, I'm not sure how that links into everything, but I was just like, oh yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting, and how he was talking about it doesn't actually take that long for biology to evolve. We think it takes a very long time, but he says that it doesn't. It's quite contrary. It's quite quick for things to evolve.
Yeah, well, particularly this whole thing about the DNA, because I don't know if people know about epigenetics. Like, it's a study of about how things switch on and off. So literally, you know, you could eat too much sugar and you could have a gene switch on, and now all of a sudden your kids have that gene switched on, and that's and if your kids eat no sugar, that gene is still probably switched on for 3 generations. Would take 3 generations for it to go back to its normal state. So all of a sudden, by something you've done in your lifetime, genes are altered for the next 3 generations. So that's really quick, that impact.
It's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. Yeah, my understanding of epigenetics was that it's basically your environment is what changes your genetics, right? And that can be influenced by the intent. What I'm learning. Oh, is there echo?
Yes.
little bit.
Yes.
How about now? Okay, fixed it.
Sweet.
How about the next page? Anything on that page, 206?
So on that second paragraph near the bottom, it starts in other words. It's like, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 sentences up. In other words, if the entity interacts within sufficiently complex environments and develops sufficiently high bandwidth connections to those environments, it will eventually evolve a higher, brighter level of awareness to better utilize that data. If the range of possible choices and the methods of selection between choices are also sufficiently rich and complex, the potential for brightness greatly expands. Hold on to these concepts, they'll become more important later on as brains and computers are related to digital consciousness. So I was like, okay, I'll hold on to them.
Yeah.
Highlighted the same thing.
Make a note of that, yeah, for sure. How about over on the next page? Anything there? I don't know why, but I had the 1, 2, third paragraph, second sentence. The extent to which learning takes place depends on the extent and efficiency with which experience interacts with memory. Yeah, I highlighted that, and when I read that now, I feel like for me, oftentimes my mind is just, it wanders. See, when I was reading this, it was wandering. It was all over the place. So I had to keep bringing myself back, and it's just that lack of focus, right? And yeah, but the thing is, if I want to learn, and I know I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to evolve, that's why I'm here, that's what I'm meant to do. I really need to learn how to direct my focus, and have my experience be more conscious and purposeful, because I go back to the past a lot and I live in my memory sometimes. I'm like, oh, remember that time? And that's what I was doing when I was reading this too. My mind was just like drifting to last night, going back to the events of last night, and that's not helpful. Like, we do have this huge capacity, this memory, but it can benefit us if we use it wisely. And I haven't been using it wisely, so I wanted to voice that, because then it can give me more accountability to actually be more mindful with my memory.
Yeah, it's challenging to stay in the here and now sometimes.
Yeah. Do you guys have any like tips or tricks, any tools that you use to stay more present?
Yeah, body senses, just your 5 physical senses input. Ask yourself what the temperature is, tactile senses, breathing. Just tune into your body. Jog around your inputs. It kind of brings you to the focus of here and now.
Yeah, breathing really helps, right?
Yeah,
But,
cleansing.
okay. I also say that drinking water, like like if you're having a problem, drink some water like right then and there. Drinking water supposedly really helps, and like do 10 jumping jacks or something. Like you just, it's like there's a physiological assistance that's different from caffeine, but yeah.
Yeah, it makes blood flowing a little bit, right?
Yeah. In fact, tell your kids a glass of water right before they take an exam, 5 percentage points increase just from that.
Nice. Yeah, I'll do that.
An easy one.
Anything else on that page?
No.
I also actually down at the bottom,
Yeah.
he says jellyfish, raccoons, and people are all aware of some things and unaware of other things. It's more a matter of degree of focus than a fundamental difference in the nature of awareness. and then skip a couple sentences, and it says the process of developing awareness is the same for all entities, whereas the limitations and the environments of each entity are unique. I thought that was pretty cool. Like that, so the jellyfish and us, we have the same process of developing, but the jellyfish's brain has limitations that ours don't, and their environment has limitations that are different from ours. I thought that was really interesting because I never know how to think about creatures that are lower down on the spectrum. Like, do they have consciousness? Like, how does it work? And so
Interesting.
Yeah, but the process is the same.
Where will they eventually be given enough time, millions of years?
Yeah.
And Tom often says too that a lot of the times, I don't know about jellyfish, but he'll say like a colony of ants is played by one IUOC, right? So it's not like one specific IUOC to each ant, but it's like just one IUOC will play all these thousands of ants. So I wonder if that's with jellyfish too. Maybe one IUOC plays like 5 jellyfish, because it would just be more. It wouldn't want to waste all its resources spending all that time playing one jellyfish.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to waste what?
All its energy playing one jellyfish. I mean,
right? And not a lot going on for just one jellyfish, but you get 5.
Yeah,
Pull all your data.
Right? It's so much more productive that way.
Yeah, it's interesting how the AUO has divided itself into these little pieces that are us. It's a trip.
Yeah. And it's actually been said, so have you guys heard that twin flame concept?
Yeah.
Flames? Oh,
the twin flame.
Flame.
You've never heard that concept, Dean?
Oh, yeah, twin flame. Like soul. I'm drawing like, yeah.
It's basically the idea that one soul is split into 2 bodies, a male and a female, and then when the male and the female meet each other, it's this cosmic connection, and it's like out of this world. And so there's a lot of romanticizing around this idea of twin flame. And so I asked Tom about it a few years ago. I'm like, so this twin flame thing, is that a real thing? And he said no. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. He's like, what does happen sometimes in the margins is that one IUOC will split into 2 different bodies, but they never meet each other. And he says it's because it is more efficient and it's productive. So usually what will happen is they'll play an avatar in like Africa and maybe an avatar in China, but they would never meet itself. It would just be split into 2 avatars.
Right. Yeah. Bob, actually, I don't remember where I caught this, but in one of his dissertations, he shares that he got some information. Oh yeah, from one of the inspects. That's what it was. Some info from one of the inspects that he had another avatar in this present, at the same time in the present moment. Yeah, he I guess he'd done some research on it and eventually found this person, but had never reached out to him. He said he was too spooked by the idea.
Oh, really? Eh?
Shouldn't have led with that. He just should have been like, "Hey, want to get some coffee?"
Yeah, exactly, right.
Like you are my alternative avatar.
Yeah, that would freak anybody out, man. With that.
Yeah, are you me? I guess we all are each other, right? I mean, we're all one on a deeper level, but this is a much closer thing. So yeah, that'd be pretty wild.
That would be wild.
Does the universe shatter? Everything goes poof if you shake their hand or whatever.
Yeah, worlds collide.
Vanessa, do you know if plants ever have IUOCs? I'm thinking like those huge groves or coral reefs. Like there's a lot of plants that kind of have some characteristic of community or whatever. I always wondered whether they had any consciousness of any kind.
Yeah, that's a big topic for discussion. I've heard a lot of people ask Tom about that. And Tom has replied with, at least when I've been there, that he doesn't see plants as conscious, because he says that definition of consciousness is the ability to make free will choices, and that based on his understanding, plants don't have free will, that it's very algorithmic. So
I see.
yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah. But then a lot of people are like, no, they do, and they challenge him on that. And he's like, that's great if you think. Like there was a book that's all about I forget what it's called. Somebody gave it.
Secret Life of Trees.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it is interesting to read. So you do wonder, like, they certainly have the ability to learn. That doesn't necessarily mean, well, I guess, does learning mean you have free will? Anyway, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I was just curious. I'm going to unplug that phone.
Wow, that's an intense phone.
Yeah.
I thought it had a backup connection. I thought I'd read something in here that Tom was saying he gave it a possibility based on some trees and forests are all interconnected through the root system, and they will send. I thought it was Tom that was saying it. Maybe I'm mistaken, and it wasn't Tom. But there was these systems can help their siblings or friends by sending nutrients or whatever through the root system to these trees that aren't doing so well.
Yeah, they act as a system rather than as individual trees. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was just like they're helping each other, and they choosing to do that based on something or other. Maybe that wasn't in here.
Yeah, I know that.
If you look into it deep enough.
Yeah, and people have commented and said that to Tom as well. A lot of these ideas, and Tom is very open. He's like, and it could be. Maybe they do have an IOC. He's like, it's very possible that they do. I haven't gotten that type of data to support that idea, but I'm totally open to it. So I said to him, I said, well, what happens if you find out that they do have free will and that they are conscious? Now what are you going to eat? You know? And then he was like, I don't know. But then he was like, oh, well, no, you could eat the fruit that fell to the ground, right? Because that's just going to die anyway. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Got to be safe there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't harvest any fruit, but if it falls to the ground, then you're okay.
Good.
Drive yourself nuts with this stuff, right?
Awesome. So what page are we on here? 208? Anything on 208? How about 209? I didn't have much at all, so you guys are going to have to check.
I've got one thing underlined in the whole chapter.
Boshen, I know you got some stuff there. Come on.
I mean, to me, this is like, I'm thinking, well, it's probably so obvious to you.
No, it's not.
Underline, but to me, it was a revelation. I said, oh, yes, I get it now. Thank you, Tom. So I do have lots of underlined. I mean, a lot of the underlined stuff you actually are talking about. I mean, on this transition from page 208 to 209, at the very bottom of 208, the sentence starts with, awareness at the cellular dim level evolves naturally from the existence of a rich and varied array of available potential states. These states are generated by direct choice, random events, and dumb luck. Being at the right place at the right time with the right stuff. And I mean, I highlighted even further because to me, this is what, like, wow, it's just clarified it for me. Like, this entity explores all the potential states it can successfully populate. The more successful or profitable configurations continue to evolve, while the less profitable ones either remain at their niche or die off. So to me, I'm getting to understand it, and I mean, I like how he's able to break it into like simple, starting from the simple worms, how it is for them, and gradually explaining how it is for the whole oneness. So
Yeah.
and then further down he's asking this question: is you all alive? Certainly not, he says. But our 3D Earth-related biological standards and perspective. So it's only by our standard is not alive, but it's too big of a question for us to understand if it's alive from a different perspective.
Yeah. It's way too far out there to wrap your mind around.
Yeah, but it's kind of like I thought somebody, somebody smarter must know those things. So I'm glad that he says that it's, that it's close to our reality, that we don't have concepts to understand how it goes beyond that. And it was kind of freeing for me to know that I don't know that, because if Tom Campbell doesn't know that for sure, that means I'm not so bad.
Absolutely. Those were awesome. I had not underlined them, but once you wrote them, I was like, read them. I was like, oh my God, those are awesome. And I did underline them, Bajan. So definitely you should share it. Sometimes we just don't, it doesn't speak to us in the moment, but then you bring it up and it's really powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's good to get others' points of view and see different angles of looking at stuff.
And at the bottom he wrote, AUO's origins lie beyond the logical reach of our understanding. Thank you, Tom. I thought I'm just so uneducated and dumb.
It's funny that you say that, because I hadn't highlighted, but I have now. But the thing is I was thinking a lot about, well, we don't even understand how the first single cell organism, like all of our physical material reality, we don't know how we got here. We don't know, how did it start from a planet of carbon and whatever, and ingredients that could support life, to actually having life. Like, we don't even understand that. And so, like, how can we understand this? That made me feel better about my lack of understanding of this, is that we don't even know, how did the first cell get on the planet? Or the first cell, wherever it was, if it came and was already on the planet when it arrived, whatever, like, how did that first evolve?
Yeah, but then, he kind of like answers this so nicely. If I read further down, at the bottom of 209, he wrote, AUO's origins lie beyond the logical reach of our understanding. Our PMR causality can offer no rational input on its own. On the next page, it continues, beginnings, much less AUO's beginnings. The only logical failure is in the asking of the question. So we don't even need to ask that question. We just maybe have to focus how we can be happy here on this planet and just forget about understanding it all. But it's kind of nice to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, definitely. Just have at it anyway. Yep.
And that you can only dig so deep before, it's okay, like, enough's enough.
Yeah, because a waste of energy. We might as well take and focus our energy on what is truly important to our everyday life.
That's kind of the impression that I had reading these chapters, actually, was I was just glazing over it, because I'm like, okay, I already get why we're here. I just want to grow up, man. I want to lower my entropy. Like, that's what I want to do, is the practical stuff. Yeah, I feel like this is really kind of like wading through the details, but what's helpful about it is that it gives me this opportunity to focus my intent, right, and to not have my mind wander. So it's really good practice, and better stuff to read than the nature of reality and how it all came to be. And that's fun,
Yeah, something your mind wants to resist, and maybe something that you don't want to do, but override the feeling and grab the reins and pull your focus over.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good practice, if nothing else.
It is good practice for focusing intent, definitely. Yeah. It's like another form of meditation, really.
Right. Keep dragging your mind back to the
present moment, right here now. Be here now. So anything else in this chapter?
Let's see. I underlined. Leave me alone. Go ask your mother.
It's not an appropriate question. I have vocabulary around it.
That question is a logical failure, young man.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that made me chuckle a little bit of good comic relief.
Yeah, I did have the next paragraph highlighted. You should continually work on developing scientific data about what you can understand while avoiding making assumptions and creating beliefs about what you cannot understand. And then this part right here, appreciating your limitations is the first step toward both knowledge and wisdom. That's a big one for me. Appreciating your limitations is the first step toward both knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, that's good, Vanessa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should have underlined that.
Because until you know where you're stuck, you don't know what to do to get past that point, right? You have to see what's keeping you stuck in the first place in order to move beyond that. And oftentimes what is keeping us stuck is a fear. So you have to identify that fear first before you can actually eliminate that fear or get rid of that fear. Yeah. Anything else on that page? Or on this chapter?
Nada.
I just underlined the last two sentences of the chapter where AUO is primary consciousness. We are derivative consciousness. It's not unusual that a child might resemble its parent.
Mm.
Thought it was great.
That is. Exactly. And I know the Bible talks a lot about that too, right? In the image of God or something. I've never read the Bible, so I don't know what it says.
I've never read the Bible, but yeah, I've read bits of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's, actually when we talk about epigenetics, and there's this thing, as you pointed out, it's how our physical environment, whether it's something we ingest like smoking or eating sugar or whatever it is, or it's a drought, that's something we don't have control over, but it's a way that the physical environment infects your genetics, but that it's passed down to kids. And I remember I was suffering jet lag and listening to a podcast. I'd never heard of epigenetics before, and I was listening to a podcast for it. And I had like the closest thing for me, like for a religious experience when I was listening to science, because I was like, oh my God, the sins of the father are visited upon the son. Like, this feels biblical, so, if we pollute our environment and our bodies are polluted and we put, a ton of Roundup in our bodies, that could be changing our genetics. We pass that down for generations. Like, I find that really compelling. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah, I think sometimes this stuff does feel quite biblical.
At the bottom of page 2010, when he was talking about that hologram image, I just have to find this. AUO's pattern of being, it will become clear to our existence, being and evolution are the expression of and the result of the existence, being, and evolvement of AUO. Our individual consciousness reflects the pattern of AUO as a piece of hologram, or each individual element of a large fractal design contains the pattern that defines the whole. This was like such a when I was on my first ayahuasca session, I remember the experience when I was actually my being level, my being, myself. I separated from my body as a light, and I remember seeing how I joined that pattern, and I was one of the fractals, and I remember being so happy because I was just changing the shapes and the color, and nothing really mattered. I was like so free. And that one experience was the most profound experience from my contact with ayahuasca. And it's yeah, and later on I got the message from ayahuasca that I should stop. And I really, when I was reading this, I said, yes, this is most enlightening moment out of this whole chapter. I really loved this part.
You were tripping on acid then, right?
No, ayahuasca, I totally support the benefits of it for humanity, because it gives you, it opens so many doors. I know Tom doesn't support that, but to me, and I see it in the community that I'm quite regularly meeting with, how they have benefited from the plant opening those doors.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, and it's not that Tom doesn't support it. He says that it can definitely give you an experience, and what's important is that you learn from that experience. Because oftentimes what happens is you get that experience and then you chase the experience and you want it again and again, and people use it as a crutch. And he doesn't support that, but he does support the learning that can come from the experience.
Thank you.
I never found the compulsion to chase it again, but I tried acid back in the day, small little dose, and I was out there too. I remember feeling like I could ask myself anything. I was really connected to a deeper part of myself, and I experimented with a couple things. One of them was telepathy. I said to my buddy, I looked over at him without moving my lips, intention through mind, said his name, like Conan, and he jumped up and he looked at me. He goes, "What?" And I started laughing, like, "Dude, you know what just happened?" And he realized it and started laughing. It was pretty interesting. Then I asked myself, how are planets made? And I went on this freaking big journey like you were talking about. Something like that. It was so deep I lost most of it. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff, mind expanding things. To delve down into that deeper area.
Oh.
How about you guys, Vanessa? Susan, have you ever tried anything? Anything expandable?
Not me. I mean, normal, non-mind expanding drugs, but none of the mind expanding things.
Yeah, I've done a lot of mind expanding drugs. Not anymore because I'm a mother with kids, but in my younger days, I did. But yeah, I got the message actually, because I did do a mind expanding drug recently, ayahuasca type, and the message that I got was, that's cheating, and you don't need that, and you need to go do the work yourself. Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's different for everybody, right? So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I started getting headaches during the ayahuasca sessions, and it's very rare. And to me, that was the message that this is not for me any longer, that I already got my message. I already got through that one experience of this hologram. I already got all I needed to know, now just to be curious and, look into maybe more conscious ways of expanding my mind.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, because it's you can see it as like a shortcut, right? But if you actually want to grow the quality of your consciousness, it's hard work, and we have to put in that energy, that effort to do that. You can't just friggin' take a pill and then all of a sudden you're evolved,
Right.
Yeah. But you can have some pretty cool experiences.
Cool.
Okay, so yeah, cool. Chapter 26, the evolution of AUO. Who is that masked consciousness thing, and what can it do? Yeah, this one I completely glazed over, so I'm going to listen to you guys and the feedback that you had on this.
Oh, yeah.
And Bhujan, I know that you said you had a lot from the first couple pages.
Well, to me, it was all like revelations, as I'm thinking, to you it's probably normal. On the second page. No, I don't. I mean, I highlighted it, but now that I'm reading it, I don't think it's that phenomenal. Um,
So this is
no.
a question of confirmation. The way I sort of saw a lot of this is he's just laying this foundation. And even at some stage says, you don't really have to understand the specifics, but isn't he basically saying there's this primordial consciousness that has potential, and as long as we believe it had the potential to, you know, understand a this, not that, that was the first way that it started to evolve, you know, hot, not cold, you know, open, not closed, whatever. And that was kind of how it started. And he's just getting us there at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going to teach us later how some other stuff. Like, is that kind of what we're supposed to get out of the chapter? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was actually focusing on too, and that's why I underlined here. Over the next several chapters, we will see how a digital model of highly aware consciousness can be derived from a single monolithic consciousness system that is driven to ever lower values of average entropy. So basically, yeah, that made me think, oh my goodness, I have learned so much here. I cannot wait for the next chapters, like you said, for this to be disclosed. But you know, it's a to me, I would not, I know that I would not be probably able to understand the next chapters if she had not laid out so in detail, you know, how everything works, starting from the beginning, you know, of the
I totally agree. It just
organism.
took me a while to realize that, okay, he's just setting us there in the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
like it took me a while because he kept on saying AOU is this and AOU is this. And I was like, but he's really talking about AOU is this in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the bit that took me a little while to be like, oh, okay, he's talking about like right at the he's just getting us there at that moment so we can understand how it started. And it's not that it's not complicated, but it's just that, you know, I needed it like put in that position. Like here, it's in this part of the AUU that we're, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's, I don't know, it's like
I was actually, oh, sorry, left.
Go ahead, go ahead.
You know, I was actually, to me, it was also like, so I felt so connected to this chapter before, because before reading this chapter, I was thinking, oh, I have to bring up with Vanessa, maybe we can talk about it at one of the meetings. Why do we need duality? You know, like, why do we need suffering? Or do we actually need suffering and pain? Maybe we don't. Maybe we can turn our love. And all of a sudden, in this chapter, Tom explained, touches on it too. What could AUO at the very bottom of page 214, what could AUO do that was interesting and challenging and stimulating? It can first create a duality within itself. And then I said, wow, I was just thinking about it. And he just explains that it's actually needed or served the purpose at one point anyhow.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, because if you're this absolute unbounded oneness, there's not much growing you can do. It's just you're just there, you just exist, right? And in order to have anything interesting occur, you have to divide yourself into different parts so that you can interact with yourself. And then that creates new opportunities and situations that you can then make choices in. And through those choices, you evolve.
Yeah, and further down, he says, like you started, Sylvia, this versus this, not this. It can alter its uniformity to create a local disturbance or distortion. So I can see our, you know, like issues or problems in life being those disturbances and distortions that are created in AUOs for the purpose of growth.
Mm. Yeah. And then you asked something around, do we need suffering? What do you think? Do we need suffering?
Really.
That's the question that I'm hoping to get the answer for, because I was going to bring it up at the meeting, and I'm hoping that, you know, the way Tom started it, explaining that we needed duality at one point, for everything to start evolving, and do we still need pain and suffering now for this to continue to evolve? It's a, you know, it's a big question for me, because I thought maybe we got to this point that we can start avoiding suffering by understanding it better, if it will help.
Yeah, who says we have to have that? If we can choose not to have it, why would we? Let's choose not to. It's up to us. To some degree, yes.
I guess I think if, for me, the way it's fit into my own personal theory is that if Earth is a school and we're here to learn and we have multiple shots at it and we've got reincarnation, then the suffering has purpose, because, if in order to be a good judge, you probably will have needed to be a condemned person at some stage. Do you know what I mean? Like, that compassion develops through, and if you think about if souls evolve and learn, most of the time there's probably 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but there's a general upward trend, then it's a bit like, a child having to put their hand on the stove to learn not to put their hand on the stove. And so as souls, I think that the suffering, I don't know if I think about it in that we need suffering, but I think of it in the suffering has purpose. And, and so when we each, if I'm suffering, then, or if actually importantly, if I see my kids suffering, it's a lot easier to take well if you think that suffering has purpose and will serve me or my kids later in this life or in the next life. So that's how I think about it. Yeah. Maybe that's a little depressing. I don't know.
Well, I think we have to bring it back to what is suffering. What is suffering? What does it mean to suffer?
Yeah.
Well, going back to, to the fact that it's only our attitude that makes us suffer, that we have no control over the circumstances. It's just how we look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah, by telling ourselves that something shouldn't be this way, unacceptance of what is the suffering. Tell yourself a story that it shouldn't be like this.
Mm-hmm. Like the ultimate definition of happiness is to be happy with what is. Yeah. But it is hard to accept the circumstances that are painful for our loved ones. So certain dose of suffering is pretty much unavoidable.
What do you think, Vanessa?
I think a good example is you use the burning your hand on the stove, and then you learn that hurts, and so you don't want to do it again. So that's a good example you can use. So you burn your hand on the stove, and now you can either choose to suffer and be like, oh, my hand, it shouldn't be feeling like this. What the hell? What's wrong with me? I'm such an idiot. And you can then suffer because of that. Or you can burn your hand and be like, ooh, that hurts. Won't be doing that again. And then you just learn like that, right? And you don't have to sit there and torment yourself. So it's really kind of your response to the stimulus that ultimately determines whether or not you will suffer or whether or not you will quickly learn from it and move forward.
How much suffering, right?
Yeah. The place where I have a problem is in truly horrible. Like, I think, thankfully, we all live, pretty good lives. But like, if you are in a war-torn place where you don't have water for your kids and you have to slowly watch your kids die because you don't have water, like, those are the types of things where I think that's where my theory has limitations. If I, as a, if you know what I mean? Like, there is some circumstances that are so awful that it's hard to be like, oh, you just need to have the right attitude about it. And so for my life, in practical life, that is absolutely the key lesson for me, is I feel that I can learn and I can look at things differently. But I wonder if I was, you know, that slow suffering, you know, or in drought, you're in a drought-ridden desert, you know, with a family, and there's literally nothing you can do. That's a lot harder to imagine. How do you have an attitude that helps the suffering?
And I totally hear you. And when I hear you say that, the first thing I think of is Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And his quote that I actually put on Facebook the other day, and he says, between stimulus and response is a space. In that space is our power to choose a response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. Because there's always that opportunity to choose. And he is the one who showed us that you can choose happiness even when your family dies, even when you're surrounded by people dying of starvation and suicide, you can still choose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard for me to get. I get it intellectually. That is hard to absorb beyond intellectually for me, but I get it, and I think it's so wise, and I have so much admiration and respect for it. It's just hard.
Yeah, and I guess you don't really know until you're in that situation either.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because what would make it so hard?
Well, I think for me, what makes it easy, this attitude of, oh, I have a choice makes most of the types of decisions I deal with easier, because it's like, oh, I'm learning, so I can make meaning out of the, you know, burn mark on my finger, because I can turn it into something. I guess it's hard for me to imagine if I'm watching my children dehydrate, like that I could turn that into meaning. And I know that that would be my job and that would be the way to do it. But it's just, I guess it's more of a reflection of my limitations of where I am in my capability than it is whether that the theory is wrong. You know what I mean?
Have you seen that movie, Life is Beautiful?
Yes, I sobbed audibly and hysterically through the entire movie. It was the most, my husband was so embarrassed. I was literally going, through the movie. That was a tough one.
Yeah. But that's
in the movie theater. In the movie theater.
Because he knows that's his he needs to make there is meaning in it, and then he turns it into a game, and he makes it fun, and you know, that's what it is about. It's like, if you're not having fun, you're not taking this light approach, then we're in the wrong space, you know. Are you crying right now?
So it clearly is a core issue for me.
Aww.
Poor dear. That's all right. It'll be all right. Don't you worry. Fine.
Yeah. Irish accent always helps things.
Right? Yeah. I feel like it's when we get more of an understanding, a deeper understanding of our true nature of who we are, we really see that this is just a glimpse in the totality of what we are and where we come from, you know. And we don't take it so seriously, because it's not it's really just an opportunity to learn and to grow and to be light about it, and have fun and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah.
What
I love about the idea of reincarnation is that it just feels like such a positive way to think about things, because then you can always be like, okay, this is just preparation for the next one. That's a lesson hopefully I don't have to learn next time.
I have another chance.
True.
And to also make the most out of this one, because we'll never get this life back again, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because who knows what we're going to be in our next lifetime. We could be living in a third world country. Then who's to even say that that's going to be a bad experience? Because I see them, a lot of them are really happy living. Yeah.
They have a lot less Roundup in their system.
You know?
Well, that's changing.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Bosha.
Well, I was kind of thinking, you know, like when we come back to new incarnation, we're totally disconnected from our previous life, because at this point we are just representation, a tiny little representation of the collective consciousness at that very moment, which is different than it was ever before.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, because we're always growing and evolving.
Yeah, so we don't ever have any connection to our previous lives, because it's just the collective has changed.
Yeah,
we
I mean, we have the we're connected to the accumulation of all the choices we've made throughout all of our previous lives, and that's developed our current quality of consciousness. So we have that connection. All the details and everything that's happened. I mean, we can access the database and revisit that if we want to learn from it, but it's not always there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My clairvoyant friend, who's very connected to, I mean, past lives is how she sees everything. You know, she focuses, she's had to learn to turn it off. So she doesn't just see everybody's past lives while she's walking down the street, because for a while she was actually a hermit. She like lived as a hermit because it was just too much, but she learned how to get it under control. But she can see your past lives. And the way, you know, her spirit guides have told her is that often what happens is we have some sort of big event in one of our early lives that somehow is something that we struggle with throughout time. And we learn and we evolve and we grow, but that sort of fundamental rift of, you know, what it means to be a woman in society or whatever it is, you know, can be something that you continue to work on in many lives.
Mm. Yeah, I can see how past traumas being still kind of like part of us, and they can. And I've been reading this book by Brian L. Weiss.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I kind of understood how it works, and yeah, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Back to the book, chapter.
Yeah, this is a great way to avoid the graphs.
Yeah, or the whole chapter. But yeah, did you guys have anything else in chapter 26 that stood out?
Not for me.
So I'm going to offer something my husband actually said, which I thought was really interesting. So I was showing him the graphs and like being like, what do you think about this? And anyway, and he was saying, well, you know, and he's not even into Tom Campbell's work. And he's sort of like, yeah, I'm not that, yeah, I'm like, aren't you interested in this? And he's like, you know, so it's not his thing, but he was like, well, this is the setting up of the digital reality, because you know that oscillation is needed. You know, in digital it's ones and zeros, in electricity it's, you know, positive and negative. And he said, so this is setting you up for the digital consciousness stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, very cool. Nice. Is he an engineer or a?
No. In fact, he studied philosophy and theology in college, and that's why I keep saying you should be interested in this.
Yeah. He's just not. He's like, nah, I'm good.
He's like, yeah. Well, it's funny because Tom talks about people like him in the chapter. He's one of those people that's like, we won't really know for sure anyway, so why worry about it? Just live a good life. And so he's in that ilk.
Mm-hmm.
Good attitude.
Yeah, it's probably the best reason. It's probably better to be curious, but if you're not going to be curious, it's probably the best reason not to be curious.
And he could be curious about other things, right? You know, learn more about other people and how he can grow more. I don't know your husband at all.
No. Well, it's interesting when and you know, I'd said nothing to my clairvoyant friend, but when she met him and she looked at his past lives and she's like, yeah, there's a clear pattern here. And I hadn't told her he studied philosophy and theology, and she said, oh, I see, he was like a preacher in his past life, but he really struggled with being a preacher because he wasn't sure if he really believed in God. So that was kind of interesting. But she said that the pattern that she saw across his lives was that he thought, you know, I can't control much, but I can try and make life better for the people around me, my family, people I work with, like that. And so I don't know about all this other stuff, and there's suffering in the world. And so what I can control is like my immediate circle, and I don't really want to think much beyond that. And when she said that, I kind of looked at it like, that's kind of hitting it on the kind of hitting it on the head. So,
Yeah.
so she saw it as a past life pattern.
Nice. I love that. Well, that's what Mother Teresa says is, you know, if you want to change the world, go home and you love your family. Because really that's the influence that you have the most is right there in your immediate circle, you know?
Yeah.
Good man. Anything else from that chapter?
I have not underlined it, but I'm just reading it right now, and it's kind of like talks about growth, and I'm going to read it to you guys. It's the last paragraph on 218. Growth in the type and number of reality cells should be sufficiently challenging for a long time, because each increment of growth creates new possibilities for new configurations of the larger system.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, obviously, you know, our problems are contributing to our growth are needed.
Mm-hmm. And that the more we grow, the more possibilities open up to us.
Mm-hmm.
That helps to accelerate our growth even further.
For new configurations of the larger system, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The more we know, the faster we learn.
Yeah, yeah. The more we learn, the faster we grow. For sure.
Learn the faster.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's encouraging to continue on this path to gain more insight and wisdom and truth, more understanding of the big picture. For me, I'm kind of like, okay, I got the big picture. You know, we're here, we're conscious beings. This is a universe, this is a strategy for us to grow and evolve, and you do that through making choices. Okay, good. I'm good. Like I'm like, I don't really want any more details. Like, that's what I know. I know what I need to do. Now I just want to go do it. You know.
Now he's giving us the kind of like a warning that now AUO is about to get organized. This is going to be happening next when it gets organized into low entropy eventually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right? Yeah, watch out when there's some structure in place. I'm laughing because we had a meeting last night with like 20 facilitators in my house. Bojana was there for low entropy, and we were saying, you know, now we've got some organization, we've got some structure to what we're doing, and so we're going to grow quickly. And so when I hear Bojana say like AUO is about to get organized, I just and I'm like, yeah, totally. So pretty cool. Cool stuff. Well, if there's nothing else from chapter 26, then we could do a closing circle and just share any final thoughts or insights or anything that you feel called to voice. Just share it now.
Well, I definitely feel called to reread both chapters.
Wow.
To understand it better, but thank you for putting some clarity on understanding it deeper. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So my observation is that I love that Bojana had this big epiphany and it added so much to the discussion. So I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Just want to wish us all a good week ahead, full of lots of good stuff and learning. Hopefully less entropy,
Absolutely.
more organization.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm just looking at what is ahead. So looks like we'll read the next two chapters, which will be about 20 pages, so chapter 27 and 28. I'm hoping it lightens up a little and is more fun. But this is fun for me, coming in and discussing with you guys and sharing. And although the material is a little too heady for me and too intellectual, I'm really trying to get out of my headspace and get more into my heart. But I see this as an opportunity for me to be present, to listen to what everyone has to share. I don't need to analyze it. I can really just be here. So these chapters that we're moving into, I'm looking forward to it. I get to apply everything in how I show up. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to next Saturday, guys.
Cool.
Nice.
Vanessa, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
All right. Ciao.
Ciao.
See you in a week.
Yeah.
What it was.